If you are new to our channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Well, Holly, let's go to the Ivy Organics 3-in-1 Plant and Garden Hotline and bring in our next guest.
So, also known as Mr. Greenthumb, Stan DeFreitas has experience as an urban horticulturist working with his local county extension service. He's taught horticultural at St. Petersburg College, and he likes to spread his gardening know-how on radio, TV, and newspaper columns. Welcome to the program.
Glad to be here with you, Holly and Joe. I'm a former extension horticulturist. I spent 8 years answering about 100,000 questions, which kind of helps do what you do and I do.
Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join Holly and myself and enlighten all of us and our listeners with some of your garden knowledge.
Well, we'll certainly try. I've been watching some of your segments online, and they are great. I enjoyed your one on using cardboard mulch, and I think that's a great tip for people.
Well, let's talk about nematodes. Are nematodes bad? And if they are, how does one control them? And what kind of damage does a nematode do if it's not doing anything good?
Nematodes are bad in that they are usually microscopic eelworms that infect many of our plants. Some nematodes can be as long as 30 feet long. In whales, trichinosis that gets in pigs is a nematode. So nematodes have affected man forever, and thank God we don't have any of those 30-foot-long nematodes in our soils.
That's a little...
Yeah, that sounds a little scary. Glad for that.
So we have a bunch in Florida. I don't know if you have as many as in Wisconsin, but there's sting, lance, stubby, spiral, root knot, as a number of nematodes that are available.
Oh, lovely. So we use a lot of mulch, and we find it beneficial. Why do you find mulch beneficial? What mulch do you like to use, and what mulch would you say is not good for your vegetable garden?
Well, most mulches are good. I like bigger particle size, thicker pieces of mulch from trees. You know, often when they grind trees down, it's better if something is composted. Like I use black cow manure down here, but you've got your purple cow manure. If something is composted, it has more beneficial bacteria in it. And many of the good beneficial bacteria actually kill some of the nematodes.
So it's kind of a nature's balance there.
Yes. I think if you can improve that soil, that is going to be helpful in getting rid of these pests. So the more organic you can be, adding, I go out and I save, when I help my wife cut up carrots and potato peelings and things like that, I recycle them. But also coffee grounds from my coffee, almost everything I have, the solution to pollution is dilution.
There you go. People who have little garden space, they say, "Oh, I can't grow anything." We recommend them growing herbs. What are tips do you have for growing herbs, and what are some herbs that you feel everybody should grow, regardless if they have a large garden or just a few pots on the windowsill?
I agree. I think herbs are wonderful, and I've really got into herbs over the last few years. I grow rosemary, I grow thyme, I grow mint, I grow basil, and I love bringing them out from outside into the kitchen. I drink tea every day now. I drink more tea than I do coffee, but I often make tea from hibiscus tea. I make mint tea, even rosemary sometimes. So many of the things we think of as just as garnishes can actually be used on your plate and can also be used in your teacup.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit. How do you prepare that? Do you just take the leaf as it's green, or do you let it dry and then you steep it in the hot water, or how do you prepare your mint tea or your hibiscus tea there?
Well, I've done it both ways. I've dried it before, and sometimes I'm the impatient gardener, and if I'm in a mood, I may take my fresh mint. I find fresh takes a little bit more than if I dry it, but you can actually use it both ways, and it's maybe a little more, may have a little more oomph to it, if you will, if it's been dried. But I find I'm also a winemaker, so I find that almost every time I do something, it's kind of an experiment between science and art.
Well,
and I find herbs almost the same way.
Well, it's a little bit with the gardening world. Yeah, there's perimeters and guidelines and some rules, but kind of every time we plant something, we're learning, experimenting the whole procedure.
Sure, and that's something I really do love. I enjoy gardening, and that it frees your mind, it frees your soul, and if you can get into it, it's just, to me, it's the greatest hobby in the world.
And we found with the Amish, it's called the farm effect. Getting your hands dirty in the soil actually stimulates, Holly, you know the term there. What is it?
It's
endorphins.
Yeah, endorphins, good chemicals in your brain. It's a positive thing, just being in nature, getting your hands in the soil, all of that.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
Now, pH level is a term people will hear, but many new gardeners are not sure what that means, and people reach out to us. We like to sometimes ask if they've had a soil test. How can a pH and soil test make one a better gardener, and are soil tests necessary, or how often?
I think they're important to use. I've been doing them. I started off doing pH testing about 40 years ago, and in fact, I still use the same tester type that I used back then. I used just a color one. That's funny. As an extension horticulturist, I always went in early and did probably 30 or 40 tests a day. Today they have a meter, and today there's a charge. When I used to do it, it was for free. But I do think pH testing is important. pH is a term for the acidity or alkalinity of the soil. It's, if you want to say scientifically, it's the hydrogen ion capacity of the soil. But let's just say sweetness or sourness of the soil. If it's too acid or too alkaline, then you need to adjust it. And just like, maybe not like your pool where you have to test it every day or two, you should be testing your soil at least probably every gardening season.
Now, when you test your pH level, you said you've got the tester. How accurate do you feel that tester is, or would you recommend people sending it into the university, their local university extension office, paying a fee, which is very small, but getting great detail?
I think it's great to get the test from the extension service. I will say I'll put my little test as a color chart. I mean, I put some reaction liquid on it, and then I have a powder that I put over it. And I think I can get a pretty accurate reading. In fact, when I go give talks at home shows and things like that, which I'm sure you guys do too, I always carry my pH tester, and I actually do free pH testing when I'm not actually giving a talk, just because I think it's that important.
So when we find out that most of our soil needs to be about 6.8, 7.2, somewhere in that range if we're doing normal vegetables. If we find that our soil is high or low, what are some means in which we can try to get that brought back up? And it's not just an instantaneous. It takes some time in order to break those numbers up or down to where we need them. True.
Now, you can add dolomite or hydrated lime to sweeten the soil, usually about 50 pounds per 1,000 square feet. Or you can add sulfur or soil acidifier, probably anywhere from 7 to 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet. Or 10 by 10, would give us 100 square feet. So you can adjust your soil accordingly. In Florida, we have a lot of shells, so we often have too alkaline a soil, so we have to add some acidifying agents. But I imagine in your area, you might have the inverse, where you have a soil that's maybe too acid, and you have to add the lime to help sweeten it.
Right. What we hear the term, and I saw this on some of your videos. What is air layering? This is a term that's new to Holly and myself, and maybe some of our listeners as well.
Air layering, we did a podcast on AskMrGreenthumb.com, and I appreciate the plug. My son helps me, and my wife helps me, so we're sort of like you. We're a family kind of run outfit. Air layering is also called Chinese pot layering. It's been done for a couple thousand years. They didn't have aluminum or plastic wrap back then, but they had leaves and things that they could use. Basically, what we're doing is forcing the plant to put out roots. So we take the bark off that outer cambium layer down to the white wood, let's say on a croton or whatever we might use, and we can put sphagnum moss around it like a handful. It's wet. We can wrap it with some plastic wrap. I usually tie it with some twistums, either top or bottom, and you can force the plant into putting roots in there in often as little as about 30 days. And the beauty of that is you've got a mature plant that you can move to somewhere else in your garden.
So it's a clone, essentially, from the parent plant.
Yes, basically you're making a cutting on the plant, but as opposed to taking, let's say, like a nurseryman might take a 2-inch cutting
right.
or 3-inch cutting, we could take something that maybe is 2 feet tall and have an instantaneous plant for our yard or garden.
So once the roots have developed, below the roots, cut it from the plant and then just transplant it to wherever you need to do it. You don't need to put it in another pot to make sure it's healthy. Just drop it right in the ground?
You could take it right to the ground, or you could move it into a gallon or 2-gallon pot if you have some good soil, and you could grow it out a bit and then move it if you wish. You know, anytime you take a smaller plant, there's a little more shock when you remove it from the mother plant. But I think it's a great thing, and of course the plant will sprout out new sprouts right from below once you take that top plant off.
Now, you could do this with fruit trees, could you not? With fruit trees is what I'm thinking, to get a very large start from an existing pear, apple, whatever the case is. That would work the same, correct?
You could do that. You could also, in some of the harder to root things, I'd actually sometimes sprinkle a little bit of root tone, indolbutric acid, around the cutting area too, just to help it maybe initiate roots a little bit quicker. But I've done it on hollies, which are kind of hard to sometimes start. So I've used it on many different types of plants, and to me it's a great way to get plants large in a hurry.
Well, before we let you go, up here we just started we've planted our tomatoes about last week in May, so many of us have already got them in the ground. We talked a little bit about in the first segment how to feed your plants and what to feed your plants. What is your recommendations on keeping your tomatoes healthy all summer long? Just where you're at, you can virtually grow year-round, and we're a little jealous of that, but we do like the winter break up here.
I understand it. We do. I grow year-round. I just had a couple avocados off my tree this morning I had for breakfast. I have fruit trees. I have tomatoes. I just harvested some little tomatoes yesterday. So we can literally grow pretty much year-round. Our biggest problem here is sometimes you have to over-summer. You know, we get so hot in July and August that you can grow cherry tomatoes and you can grow collard greens and some of the other greens, but it almost gets too hot and too much fungus and things going on. So our best time here is probably a time you would never think of, but like February, a garden, a fall garden and a spring garden.
Yeah, and that's so what can we do to keep our tomatoes healthy through the growing season?
Well, probably a good soil, you know, starting off with improving that soil. As I always say, make the best soil you can make. And that improves cow manure. That means adding peat. You know, when I was a kid, my dad did not have great success gardening because he was a New York City boy. And he thought you could just dig up the backyard, you know, sand and everything was going to be perfect. And he didn't have great success. And I think he kind of spurred me into wanting to learn why he did not have success. And the biggest thing I could say is get the soil as good as you can. I'm always improving the soil. I'm always adding more peat, more cow manure. As I always say, make that $10 hole for that $10 plant, and you're going to have a $100 tree.
Absolutely. Well, Stan, we greatly appreciate you taking time to be with us. How can our listeners find out more about you and hear your podcast, see your videos, and find out more information or reach out to you if they have a question?
Well, I appreciate what you guys are doing as well. I've been watching your podcast. They can go to mine as well. I hope they will also become subscribers. As I see you've got thousands of subscribers, and I'm jealous of that. I need more subscribers. But they can go to AskMrGreenthumb.com, and we're on YouTube, got a YouTube channel as you do. And, you know, I think the more the merrier. You guys are turning out great information. We're trying to turn out great information, and I think we're helping the world one garden at a time.
Well, Stan, thank you very much for being with us. We greatly appreciate your time and the information you've shared with all of us.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for checking out the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show. For more, go to the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for full-length in-studio video and podcast replay of Season 1. Season 2 underway and added weekly. Tweet us at TWVG Show or hashtag TWVG to be part of the program.